Carruth gets away for the first down marker. What a play by the rookie Rae Carruth.
The second time in a decade, the nation is witnessing a trial of a pro football star in connection with a brutal murder. First it was O.J. Simpson, and now it's another young man from California. His name is Rae Carruth.
Panthers fans knew him as Rae Carruth, a first-round draft pick, a star wide receiver. But for the last 19 years, he has lived as Ray Wiggins, North Carolina State Prison inmate number 0712822. America had seen this story before. A beautiful woman murdered, a football star on the run. It had been 4 years since O.J. Simpson. Just like Simpson's trial, Carruth's case was on national TV. It was a spectacle. It was surreal.
What he did was a very horrific and just unimaginable thing. And it deserves the harshest punishment. He deserves to be dead for what he did to my daughter.
Ray Wiggins, later known as Rae Carruth, was born on January 20th, 1974, in Sacramento, California, to his mother Theodore Smith and his father Charles Wiggins. His biological father wasn't around much growing up, and his mom would go on to marry a man named Samuel Carruth. Ray would adopt his stepdad's last name, even though Samuel and his mom would get divorced years later when he was 14 years old, leaving her to raise him all by herself. He grew up in what was considered a bad part of Sacramento, the Oak Park section, known for its drugs and violence. But despite the tough environment that he came up in, Ray managed to stay out of trouble. He never did drugs or even drank. He was too focused on making his dreams of reaching the NFL come true. And he was a great football player as well. When he attended Valley High School, he earned the nickname The Truth due to his talents.
Ray was a lot of fun to be around.
I believe he was in kindergarten and he was asked to draw a picture of what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he drew himself standing between football goalposts.
I can quick seal, guys, can I?
The veteran high school and college coach had a feeling he was looking at a future NFL star.
I saw this guy fly around the track, and I asked one of the coaches, who is that? And they said, that's Rae Carruth. He's a sophomore, he's not on the varsity. I said, yes, he is. And we're gonna bring him up. I think he caught 11 balls for 221 yards, and people were kind of shocked. How could a 15-year-old sophomore have that kind of a game? Was it a one-game thing, or did this kid have a career? And he just went on from there doing the same types of things game after game.
He was good enough to earn a scholarship from the University of Colorado Boulder, playing the position of receiver next to future NFL star Kordell Stewart. Ray was winning on and off the field. In 1996, he was named an All-American as one of the top collegiate players in the nation. He graduated as a double major in English and education, but he did have one life-changing event during his time at the University of Colorado. While he was there, he continued to see his high school sweetheart, Michelle Wright, and she ended up getting pregnant. But he urged her to get an abortion and would later say that the kid wasn't his at all. Despite the paternity issues he had going on, Ray still made his dream come true. He was selected in the first round of the 1997 NFL Draft. He was drafted by one of the newest franchises in the NFL, the Carolina Panthers, located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Ray would go on to sign a 4-year, $3.7 million contract with a $1.3 million signing bonus. He would send his new girlfriend, Amber Turner, ahead of him to look for places for them to live in Charlotte. She was only 17 years old during this time, but her mom signed off on the arrangement. Once he arrived in Charlotte, he immediately fell in love with the nightlife and was frequently seen at bars and gentlemen's clubs around the city. Despite his habit of indulging in the nightlife, Ray still had a solid rookie season for the Carolina Panthers, starting 14 games, catching 44 passes for 545 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was named to the NFL All-Rookie team and had even bigger plans for his second year in the league. By 1998, his girlfriend Amber had already moved back to Colorado. They broke up due to his numerous affairs, but Rae would get a phone call from Amber letting him know that she was pregnant with his child, and it said that he wasn't too happy about the news. According to Amber, he told her that he would send someone to Colorado to take care of her if she didn't get an abortion. After receiving numerous threatening phone calls from Rae, she decided to terminate the pregnancy. This was a big relief for Rae because he was already paying child support to his former girlfriend, Michelle Wright, who took him to court and was granted $6,000 a month. This amount would be reduced to $2,700 a month after they came to an agreement. In exchange for Rae becoming a better father and becoming more active in his child's life, Rae Jr., although he never honored these conditions and remained an absentee dad.
He had a weakness for the women, and the women had a weakness for him.
And a popular homecoming prince of Valley High would leave behind a string of broken hearts.
He was very popular in school. His friends and family even used the term ladies' man to describe him.
One of those many high school girlfriends would later become the mother of Carruth's child. Long before Sharika Adams would come along, he'd recklessly succumb to the charms of another young woman named Michelle Wright. At age 20, Rae Carruth had become the father of a baby boy named Raylando.
She did her best as a single mother to raise him and instill values in him.
I raised Rae from a young man to a great man. My son has morals, he has values. Rae didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs. He was a mentor. He loves children, and children love him.
And he came up on the scene, and you saw him develop through training camp, and you saw the talent. And you're like, oh, this guy's going to be good. When you see certain guys, you're like, okay, maybe in 5 years you might be reading about him, and not in a good way. Right? But you never saw that with Rae.
In 1997.
And I think right now, they want me to speed along, and hopefully when we get in the game, I'll be able to produce this so they can feel comfortable with putting me in.
In the opening game of the 1998 NFL season, Rae broke his foot and was out for the remainder of the year. He vowed to have a successful rehabilitation and make his third season in the league his best. But that same year, he happened to attend a pool party held by fellow professional athletes in the city, and this is when he would meet a 24-year-old woman named Sharika Adams, a former student at Winston-Salem University and now a real estate agent who happened to dance on the side. She was working at the Diamond Strip Club. On the very same day that she met Rae, Sharika was so infatuated that she took him to go meet her dad. According to Sharika's friend Valerie Brooks, who attended the party with her, she could tell that her friend was smitten by Rae Carruth, but she said that he gave her a bad vibe, and she felt like he was just an NFL playboy. But despite her friend's suspicions, Sharika was in love, and there was nothing that Valerie could do to stop it. Over the next 6 months, the two would continue a whirlwind romance, and Rae would often attend the Diamond Strip Club where she worked at, and Sharika ended up getting pregnant. This made Rae highly upset. He believed that Sharika was trying to trap him with a baby. He complained to his close friends that Sharika had a reputation of dealing with other professional athletes in the city, and he didn't want to be the one stuck with her. Just like his previous girlfriends, he initially told Sharika to get rid of the baby, but after it was clear she was going to keep her child, he started acting like he was a proud dad to be, even though he claimed that he didn't even know Sharika's last name until they attended a Lamaze class together. Rae stayed by her side throughout the duration of her pregnancy, and Sharika was extremely excited about becoming a mom. But unfortunately for her, she didn't realize that it was all just a facade, and Rae had been plotting on her the entire time. He hired a career criminal who was working as a bouncer in a local nightclub, and Sharika worked in the gift shop of that same club as well. His name was Van Brett Watkins, also known as New York. Initially, Rae hired him to be his bodyguard, but he had ulterior motives. He was well aware of Van Brett Watkins' criminal past and his reputation for being a hitman for hire, since he had already admitted to killing 4 people for money in the past. That's when he approached him with a proposition. He told him that he needed to get rid of what he perceived to be a problem, his unborn child. Rae came up with multiple evil plans to get the job done. First, he told Van Brett Watkins where Sharika lived at and that he could ambush her there, attack her, and cause her to lose the baby. But he never showed up to carry it out. The second plan was for Rae to set up a date and have dinner with Sharika at a local restaurant, and when she was leaving, Van Brett Watkins could ambush her there. But once again, Van Brett Watkins didn't show up. This caused tension between the two men. Rae had made 2 cash payments of $300 and $2,000 to have the deed done, and by November of 1999, Sharika was 8 months pregnant, just 1 month shy of giving birth to her first child. But in Rae's mind, he knew that he couldn't let that happen no matter what. Rae told Van Brett Watkins that he needed to get the job done ASAP. He responded by saying that I don't beat up girls for hire, I kill people. And that's when the two men came up with their final and most murderous plan, to not just get rid of the baby, but to get rid of Sharika Adams altogether, permanently. He told Van Brett Watkins that he would pay him $3,000 up front, and he would pay him the other $3,000 once the job was done.
Van Watkins was managing a Charlotte nightclub when the two met.
And then he said, one of your managers for the club told me that you was a hot shot in New York. I said, I got a problem.
The Panthers wide receiver told him about a pregnant former girlfriend who insisted on having her baby.
Said she don't want pay. She wants to have the baby. I don't want her to have the baby. I want you to beat her up and abort the baby. And I thought about it for 5 months before I did it.
When it came down to it, and that night, I said I was going to get it over with and let the chips fall where they may.
Initially, the plan was for him to do it all by himself, while Rae was down in South Carolina attending training camp, a place that he could use for his alibi. But that plan didn't work out either, and eventually they would have to do it in concert, together. The plan was for Rae to invite Sharika over to his home, under the assumption that he was going to take her out on a nice date. On the evening of November 15th, 1999, Sharika would arrive at Rae Carruth's home, but she immediately started to feel uneasy. She even called her mom and said that I don't know what this is all about. Rae invited me over, but he has a house full of people. It doesn't seem like we're about to go out on a date. Eventually, he did take her out. They went to a movie theater near Ray Road, with plans to go to a 9:15 screening to see the newest Denzel Washington movie called The Bone Collector. After the movie was over, Rae told Sharika that he wanted to spend the night at her house, so they went back to his place to pick up her car, then headed to her home. Rae Carruth's vehicle would stay ahead of Sharika while they were driving, but little did she know that she was being trailed by her killer, Van Brett Watkins, along with his 2 accomplices. A local Charlotte drug dealer named Michael Kennedy, who was the one who supplied the vehicle and the weapon, along with his best friend Stanley Abraham. They were taking a more remote and secluded route to Sharika's home, just like they had planned. And when the time was right, Rae came to an abrupt stop, forcing Sharika to stop behind him as well. That's when a gold Nissan Maxima pulled up alongside Sharika's black BMW. The backseat passenger window rolled down and shots began to ring out. And according to Van Brett Watkins, once Rae seen everything go down, he gave him a big smile before speeding away in his white SUV. He drove straight to the home of his Carolina Panthers teammate Hannibal Navies and played video games for the rest of the night, while his cell phone continued to go off, missing phone calls from Sharika's mom.
But when I got there, they met me and told me that Sharika was already in surgery to have the baby by cesarean section. I immediately decided, oh my God, I gotta call Rae, because I bet he doesn't know what's happened. You know, somehow she got shot going home or whatever. And I'm like, I gotta call him. So I had 2 numbers. I had a cell phone number and a beeper number for him. And so I just continually just kept calling both, no answer.
This happened right after midnight on November 16th of 1999. Rae was under the belief that he had finally gotten rid of his problem, but despite being hit 4 times, Sharika was a fighter. She was still alive. She managed to drive another few hundred feet into a residential area, then parking in front of a home, honking her horn repeatedly. During their relationship, Rae had gifted her a cell phone, and she would use that very same phone to call 911, despite her injuries. She calmly managed to tell 911 dispatchers how everything happened and who she felt was responsible, the father of her child, Rae Carruth. 911 had a difficult time pinpointing her location, but eventually the people inside the home came outside and was able to give directions. The paramedics arrived on scene and rendered aid to Sharika. She told them the exact same story that she told the 911 dispatcher, that it was Rae Carruth, the father of her child, that did this to her.
I was basically sitting in this position reading, and I heard the gunshots, and I went to my back door to look across the fence at Rae Road to see if I could see anything. Lights were flashing, and then the car pulled into my driveway, and then it turned and come across the front of my lawn, and the horn continued to blow.
What kind of car are you in?
Black BMW.
Black BMW. What's wrong? Did you have an accident?
No, she's been shot, medic.
Okay.
911. I've been shot.
You've been shot? Where are you at, man?
I'm 8 months pregnant.
How'd this happen?
I was following my baby's daddy, Rae Carruth, the football player.
Where's he
He
at?
was in the car in front of me, and he slowed down, and somebody pulled up beside me and did this.
And then where'd he go?
He did laugh. I think he did it. I don't know what to think of.
She was really, really disappointed in Rae's reaction to her pregnancy. She said that he's a want-to-be bad guy. She said, I don't understand why. I thought maybe he would be happy. That she told him, I'm going to have my baby. I'm going to have my baby, and if you're going to be there with me and my baby, then fine. If not, I have enough support.
First interview, he's basically still the bereaved boyfriend and father, and you know, he don't know what happened.
Before they left, Athey casually asked Carruth to see his cell phone. It would be the key to unlocking the case.
Right. We knew what numbers he was calling and what numbers were calling Rae.
I remember asking Rae about it. You know, I heard a little something, something. You know, and he said, Crawford, what'd you hear? I said, we might be a daddy in. And he said, oh, somebody's been telling secrets.
Sharika was godmother to my daughter, and she came to the hospital, and she literally, would not give me my baby. She fell asleep with her in her arms, and she just held her and caressed her so passionately, and when she found out that she was pregnant, you know, she was very excited about that.
After being transported to the Carolina Medical Center, an emergency C-section was performed in order to save her unborn child. He was delivered at 1:42 a.m., over an hour after Sharika had been shot, meaning that he wasn't receiving proper oxygen to his brain that entire time, causing him to develop cerebral palsy. He was named Chancellor Lee, a name that Sharika had picked out well in advance in case she had a boy. Tubes were placed in Sharika's throat in order to keep her alive. Despite all of the trauma that her body endured, she was still able to muster up enough strength to help out detectives by writing down what happened on that night. She wrote down that before her and Rae left the house, he called someone on his cell phone and said that we're leaving now, as well as Rae insisting that she follow behind him on the way over to her house. Shortly after writing the notes implicating Rae Carruth in her shooting, she fell into a coma. Despite him being the mastermind behind the sinister plan, Rae Carruth showed up to the Carolina Medical Center, acting as if he was a concerned father-to-be. He even demanded to see his newborn son. But according to Candace Smith, the woman that he showed up with that night, who was an exotic dancer as well and worked alongside Sharika, she stated that Rae kept saying that he wished Sharika would just die, and basically admitted his involvement in what happened to her. With the information that they had, the police confiscated Rae's cell phone to see who he had been in contact with, and it put him right on the trail of Van Brett Watkins and Michael Kennedy. The detectives questioned Rae about the two men who he had been in contact with in the hours leading up to Sharika's death, and that's when Rae finally admitted what happened. In order to save himself, he said it all went down because of a drug deal gone wrong. And in order to get revenge, Van Brett Watkins set everything up trying to kill Rae, but killed Sharika in the process. The police then arrested Van Brett Watkins and Michael Kennedy, interrogating them with the information that Rae had given to him. But both men told the detectives that they had it all wrong, and it was really Rae who set up the whole thing. Van Brett Watkins even stated that Rae threatened his life by saying that if he didn't kill Sharika, he would have somebody kill him. With the 911 call from Sharika Adams, as well as her handwritten notes, and the statements made by Michael Kennedy and Van Brett Watkins, police decided that it was time to move in on Rae Carruth. In the early morning hours of Thanksgiving Day, on November 25th of 1999, Rae Carruth was arrested on first-degree murder charges. The violent nature of the crime involving an NFL player sent shockwaves through the Charlotte community, as well as grabbing headlines nationwide. This was just 4 years after the infamous O.J. Simpson trial, where the former NFL player was charged with the first-degree murder of his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson. But this case was different because Rae Carruth would become the first active NFL player to be charged with murder, and over a decade before former New England Patriots player Aaron Hernandez would be charged with 3 murders. After being arrested, Rae posted a $3 million bond under the condition that he wouldn't leave Mecklenburg County, also with the stipulation that if Sharika or the child died, he would turn himself in immediately. Rae retained the legal counsel of one of the best and most expensive defense attorneys in Charlotte, a man by the name of David Rudolph. Rae's mom, Theodore, said that she initially wanted Johnny Cochran to represent her son, but when she couldn't get him, one of his partners referred her to David Rudolph. But on December 14, 1999, Sharika Adams was taken off of life support and passed away. And on that very same day, Rae Carruth got a phone call from his attorney, David Rudolph, letting him know that Sharika had passed away and that he needed to turn himself in. But Rae had no intentions on surrendering to authorities. He planned on escaping the state of North Carolina with help from another one of his female friends. Her name was Wendy Cole, and she had known Rae for a long time and would often house sit for him, checking his mail and taking care of his dogs while he was away. She was actually in the process of leaving the Charlotte area, headed to California to attend cosmetology school, but Rae convinced her to let him hide in the trunk of her Nissan Maximum as she made the drive out west. Rae had $3,900 on him, a cell phone, energy bars, and 2 large bottles for him to urinate in during their trip. They made it about 500 miles outside of Charlotte, arriving at a Best Western hotel in a place called Wildersville, Tennessee. After checking into the hotel, Wendy started to have second thoughts about helping out Rae. She didn't want to be mixed up in harboring a fugitive, not to mention that the FBI was now involved in the manhunt for Rae Carruth. Wendy called Rae's mom and told her where they were at. She was afraid for her son's life, so she contacted law enforcement under the promise that they wouldn't hurt Rae when they found him. FBI agents tracked down Wendy Cole at the Best Western in Tennessee and confronted her. At first, she tried to act like she had no idea where Rae was, but eventually she gave in and told him that he was hiding in her trunk. And that's where the FBI agents found him, laying in the fetal position. He was captured on December 15th of 1999, and the very next day, the Carolina Panthers waived him under a moral clause that he had in his contract.
First it was O.J. Simpson, and now it's another young man from California. His name is Rae Carruth. Carruth was accused of ordering the murder of his pregnant girlfriend.
We don't know what's going on. We don't know any of the details of what's really happened, but you know, we really feel for the families involved. It's got to be a terrible thing to carry today, and you know, it's just a sad day.
So I don't know any of the details or anything more than I'm disappointed that it's come to this.
I asked her if Rae Carruth was with her. She said no. I said, where's he at? She said, well, I'm not sure, but he's around here. And I sat down on the side of the bed and I said, you know where he is, don't you? She just stared, and then I said, where is he, Wendy? And she looked at the keys. And I didn't pick up on it the first time. I said, where is he, Wendy? And she looked at the keys again. He's in the trunk, isn't he?
Rae Carruth would sit in a local Charlotte jail for almost a year until his trial started. It said that he rejected a plea offer of second-degree murder, meaning that he was up for first-degree murder, and the stakes were life and death. The trial of Rae Carruth would commence on October 23rd of 2000. But despite the odds and the evidence being stacked against him, Rae's family and friends stayed by his side, especially his mom, saying her son wasn't an evil person like they were trying to portray him to be in the media. She believed that it was all just coincidence and a big misunderstanding, and that her son would ultimately be found innocent.
Our neighborhood was a middle-class neighborhood. Everybody worked. I worked.
She did her best as a single mother to raise him and instill values in him.
I raised Rae from a young man to a great man. My son has morals. He has values. Rae didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs. He was a mentor. He loves children, and children love him.
Just everybody just pray. You know, just pray. This is just not Rae. This is not something that we were expecting, the arrest or anything like that. Anybody who knows Rae knows that this is just totally out of character. This is not my son.
Rae was the epitome of what I feel represented what a black man should do as far as having children out of wedlock.
I mean, you've done nothing wrong. Everybody's hung you out to dry. They've already convicted you. They didn't try you, they just convicted you.
People don't know what fear will make them do, so they need to ask themselves. In this case, you're 25 years old at the time. You've never been in trouble. You've never had dealings with the law. You've been locked down for 12 days by yourself. What would you do? Would you just jump up and go back to jail?
Rae's defense team would stick to the story that it was all just a drug deal gone wrong. The story goes that on the night of Sharika's death, Van Brett Watkins was out looking for Rae Carruth because he owed him money from a drug deal that they had, and when he failed to repay, he was out for revenge. He found Sharika and drove up on her asking her where Rae was at, and it said that she responded by sticking up her middle finger, which enraged Van Brett Watkins, and he started to shoot into her vehicle indiscriminately. The prosecution would argue that this had nothing to do with any drug deal, and it was simply about a selfish man who would resort to murder in order to avoid his responsibilities of being a dad. They were seeking the death penalty, and with the overwhelming evidence that they had, many people believed that that's exactly what the verdict would be, not to mention the countless witnesses that they had to testify in their favor, starting with Carruth's ex-girlfriend Amber Turner. Rae initially requested for her to come to speak on his behalf, to tell the court how much he missed his son and how he really wanted to be a dad, even though he forced her to get rid of the baby. But ultimately, Amber would expose Rae on the stand, telling the story of how he pressured her and ultimately intimidated her into terminating the pregnancy. But Amber's mom was called to testify as well, and she was on his side. She spoke very highly of Rae and even mouthed the words "I love you" to him for the entire courtroom to see. They would also call Michelle Wright to the stand, the mother to his first son, Rae Jr. She talked about how difficult it was obtaining child support from Rae, and how she ultimately had to sue him in order for him to pay. This case also affected other professional athletes in the Charlotte area. NBA player Charles Shackelford, who was playing for the Hornets at the time, was called to testify. It was revealed that he had a relationship with Candace Smith, the woman that came to the hospital with Rae on the night that Sharika was shot. The only issue was Charles Shackelford was married. According to Sharika's mom, she felt like her daughter's case had become a joke, and the courtroom was more like a circus. The prosecution even attempted to attack Sharika's character by bringing up the fact that she allegedly had relationships with other celebrities, such as former Charlotte Hornets player Larry Johnson, NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal, and Southern rap star Master P. Things would get even crazier after Van Brett Watkins was called as a witness. He got so mad during cross-examination that he threatened to do bodily harm to Rae's attorney. His co-defendant, Michael Kennedy, would also take the stand, recounting the story about how Rae recruited him to become a part of the plan to kill Sharika Adams.
The trial to me was no more than just a circus.
Kennedy agreed to testify without a plea deal, and he told the jury why Carruth wanted Sharika out of the way.
She was trying to juice him for money, and he was already paying like almost $5,000 in child support.
And more importantly, he also put Carruth at the murder scene.
Rae went over a hill and then down in a dip. Then he stopped his car. She stopped behind his. I stopped behind her. Then Watkins told me to pull up beside her car. So I pulled up beside her car, and he started shooting at her car.
Kennedy's testimony was powerful, but Carruth's attorney, David Rudolph, would have an answer.
He was simply covering up his own drug dealing, so he had to come up with some explanation of why he happened to be driving the car.
He must have been mighty angry at you to show up at his house for this hit without the gun, wasn't he?
Wasn't he?
Excuse me?
Wasn't he? I just answered you.
What's your answer, yes or no?
Wasn't he? Yeah.
And so did he say, well, you go on back and you go get that gun, because I don't need to be spending another $200 and having Mr. Kennedy running all around all night looking for a gun when...
I didn't need a gun. Okay, for me to kill somebody, I don't need a gun. Can't you look and see? I'm 286 pounds. Okay, I would rip you like a rag doll. Okay?
Is that what you're going to do to Sharika?
I could have, but I didn't. Okay, I could have killed her, the baby. Okay, that wasn't my beef. I didn't kill my wife with the meat cleaver. I threatened her. This is what I tried to encourage the young man to do. I told him not to do it. For 6 months, I avoided him. I didn't go ahead and do it. I couldn't do it. He forced me to do it. He threatened me and the ones I loved.
Rae Carruth. Oh, that's the I was referring to, who got me into this.
Chief Prosecutor Gentry Caudill told me that he's lost 10 pounds during these 3 months.
Let him be held responsible for the acts that he's done.
During his trial, Rae was facing significant financial issues. He had blown a good portion of his NFL earnings on failed business ventures, such as a car title loan company, and he was supposed to be closing on another home in Charlotte, but he couldn't get financed by a company and was forced to back out of the deal. The couple that owned the property was suing for breach of contract. Rae's financial issues were so bad, he was about to lose his high-powered lawyer, David Rudolph. He could no longer afford to pay for his legal fees, but at the last minute, Judge Charles Lamb stepped in and forced him to take the case as public defenders, and to do it for free, pro bono. This was a very controversial decision in the Charlotte legal community, as well as in the news. Many people wonder why the judge was giving Rae Carruth such favorable circumstances. Van Brett Watkins would take a plea deal for second-degree murder and a sentence of 40 to 50 years in prison. Michael Kennedy would become the very first person in Mecklenburg County to take the stand without a deal with the prosecution. But his gamble paid off, and he will be sentenced to 11 years in prison for second-degree murder. According to law enforcement, the third man in the vehicle, Stanley Abraham, wasn't really involved with the plot to kill Sharika. He just so happened to be there that night because Michael Kennedy was his good friend. He would ultimately plead guilty to 2 lesser accessory charges, being sentenced to 90 days in jail. Many people assumed that Rae Carruth would get the harshest punishment, life in prison, or even the death penalty. The jury was comprised of 7 men and 5 women, and they were all ready to give Rae Carruth the maximum punishment. All of them but except one, who believed that if Van Brett Watkins, the man who actually pulled the trigger, only got a second-degree murder charge, how could Rae Carruth get a first-degree murder charge when he was just the mastermind? After days of deliberation, the jury came up with a compromise that Rae wouldn't be found guilty of first-degree murder, but he would be found guilty on multiple lesser charges, resulting in him being sentenced to 18 to 24 years in prison. Sharika's mom and family felt like the verdict was a slap in the face, and Rae couldn't hide his excitement even in court, because all things considered, this was a win for him. After receiving his sentence in early 2001, Rae was sent to the Sampson Correctional Institution.
Carruth seemed to have it all. He was young, rich, and in the spotlight for Charlotte's new favorite team.
Carolina Panther Rae Carruth has been arrested and charged on 3 charges in connection with the shooting of his pregnant girlfriend, Sharika Adams.
The judge asked them if that was the only thing they would consider was first-degree murder. And I think they were so overconfident that the conspiracy and the murder charge would go together that they didn't even put second degree on the table for Rae.
They found him guilty of firing into an occupied vehicle, felony murder.
And in addition, they found him guilty of trying to kill the unborn child. Then they found him not guilty of first-degree murder, which they did not follow the law.
At one point, I asked a question, is there anybody in here who doesn't think Carruth is up to this and up to his eyeballs? And everybody said yes, they agreed that he was. But we still had a juror who would not go for the first degree. So we did have a compromise verdict. We said, okay, we'll agree that he's guilty of all the lesser charges, but we'll say we cannot convict on first degree.
It is the judgment of the court that the defendant be imprisoned for a period of not less than 196 months.
One of the first things he did after being locked up was taking Sharika's mom to court trying to get primary custody of his son, Chancellor Lee. And for a short time, his mother, Theodore, actually did gain custody. And while Chancellor was still a baby, she took him to go see his incarcerated father. The two families would continue to fight for custody of Chancellor, but ultimately a family court judge would decide that Sharika's mom, Sandra Adams, should have primary custody. Rae wouldn't say too much about the murder of Sharika Adams, and when he did speak about it, he simply maintained his innocence. But his co-defendant, Van Brett Watkins, would do multiple interviews on different platforms such as A&E, giving in-depth details about exactly what happened on that night and how everything led up to him shooting Sharika. And he would often talk about it with a very cold and almost evil demeanor.
My name is Van Brett Pierre Watkins Sr. I'm in North Carolina Department of Corrections for the murder of Sharika Adams.
Van Brett Watkins claims to be a professional killer.
I didn't have no qualms about killing a pregnant woman. I plotted it out, and I did it quickly. And it was my toughest hit ever.
You know, when the time comes and I do get to talk to Chancellor, I'll sit him down and I'll tell him what happened. Not what the media believes happens or not what Watkins says happened, but what actually happened that night.
Carruth, who declined ESPN's request for an interview, has always maintained he had nothing to do with the murder, as he did in this 2001 interview with CNN.
I was not there. I didn't see the shooting. I didn't hear any shots. I can't testify to anything that happened to Sharika on Rae Road.
During his incarceration, Rae became a certified barber through the North Carolina Board of Barber Examiners, and as his 2018 parole date approached, he also started to change his story about his involvement in the death of Sharika Adams, finally admitting that he did set everything up and that he was begging for forgiveness from the public and from Sharika's mom, Sandra, who stated that she really believes his confession was really just for the parole board because throughout the years Rae had never taken responsibility, so now it just seemed odd. He would continue to harass her through letters, taunting her about how one day he was going to regain custody of his son Chancellor, with statements such as "you're getting older and gonna die soon, so eventually Chancellor is gonna be in my custody anyways, so we might as well go ahead and work something out." And if Rae's admission of guilt was simply to help him get free from prison, it worked, because in October of 2018, he was released from a North Carolina state prison. He would move to Pennsylvania, where he continued his career as a barber and living somewhat of a normal life. He spoke with the media about wanting to have a relationship with his son Chancellor Lee, but his grandmother Sandra Adams wasn't letting that happen. She was the one by Chancellor's side every day giving him the care that he needed, overcoming all the odds so he could live a normal life. And in 2021, he graduated from high school and was celebrated by his dad's former team, the Carolina Panthers. In December of 2023, Van Brett Watkins passed away from cancer while still incarcerated, exactly 24 years after he murdered Sharika, and that's how old she was when she died. Her mother, Sandra Adams, stated that she felt like it was poetic justice. Sharika's family continues to keep her memory alive, celebrating her life each year with a memorial.
The only way for me to be out of bondage was to immediately forgive them and open that door for my soul to be free.
Hatred, she believes, is non-productive. Instead, this tragedy has led her on a mission. She speaks out often for peace.
And it's really a shame that the #1 killer of pregnant women is murder.
In order to be forgiven, you have to accept responsibility. So with him, you know, those were his words. I take responsibility. And when you look at that, it takes a hell of a man to do that.
If I could change anything, I'd change the whole situation. His mother would still be here, and I wouldn't be where I'm at. So, I mean, that's what I would want to change. I would want to change for the incident to never have happened at all.
Yes, I speak to Erica.
This is Erica.
Erica, this is Rae Carruth.
You've never had a chance to just talk, and so you had some things you wanted to say.
I guess, honestly, I just want to truly be forgiven. My life, without making that situation right, won't be as good regardless of where I'm at or what I'm doing. It just will never sit well to me. My conscience will never be right until I find a way to be a part of my son's life and help make a difference. That's what means the most to me.
He is attacking me, saying that I'm telling lies about him, that I'm trying to turn the public against him. And I've never done that. Whether he means it or not, he's spoken into the universe and said out of his mouth that he was responsible for Sharika's death and for Chancellor's cerebral palsy. And I have never heard that before.
The letter goes on to criticize Adams at length, saying that she has, quote, capitalized on the situation, even calling it a hustle.
Carruth's letter to Miss Adams says that she won't be around forever, to quote it, and that he'd like to be considered as an option for care for Chancellor.
Sharika's #1 dream in life was to become a loving mother to her child. But unfortunately, that dream was turned into a nightmare by a group of evil men, with the mastermind being the father of her child. And Sharika Adams, she was only 24 years old when she died. Rest in peace, Queen.